Hey guys, happy February. Geez, 2025, it came in hot, huh? January was such a crazy month. There is something in the air, I tell you. I even had all kinds of issues with technology that I never have. Whew, it was something. I hope February is going to be at least a little bit more chill. You better have checked out the last episode with Chris Gale. If you haven't, make sure to hit play on that right after this one. Chris is incredible, an outstanding leader, and you really shouldn't miss out on that. Well, really, you shouldn't miss out on any of these episodes. We always have amazing guests, and it's awesome to hear their stories and just relate to them. Also, our guests all have such different personalities, different backgrounds, right? But we all can relate because of tennis. Today's episode is super cool, you guys. I got to talk with Mariaan de Swardt, who you may remember watching on the tour in the 90s and early 2000s. She is our first Grand Slam champ here on the pod, and she's just such a gem. Her passion for tennis is obvious, and Westwood Country Club is so lucky to have her. I have no doubt you will enjoy this conversation. The title of the episode is also something I'm a little bit excited about because I can't even tell you how many times I have heard my husband say, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. There is no staying the same. And Marianne kind of has that same attitude. She didn't say it in the same way, but she believes the same thing. And she said that there's always something you can do to just get a little bit better. She has that championship attitude, and I love it. And it's funny because at first when I heard that quote, I was like, huh? Of course you can stay the same. But then after really thinking about it, I was like, you know what? That's actually true. Whatever you decide to do, whether it's what you're eating, your workouts, your sleeping habits, and of course, many other things, those will slowly either make you better or worse at something. I really think listening to this episode will make you better. But before we go get better together, just a quick reminder to subscribe to Vida Tennis and follow us on social media. If you want to help me out, please share this podcast with someone who loves tennis. I hope you're hanging in there. 2025 has been a wild ride, but hey, at least we got the joy of seeing Madison Keys finally get her more than well-deserved first slam at the Australian Open. I'm not going to lie, I may have screaming at the TV and tears of joy may have been shed. It was just, emotional to see her redemption, to see her achieve her dream after so many years. I know a lot of us are definitely on the same page here. So there's some good stuff going on too. All right, get ready to hear from one of the best out there, only here at Vida Tennis. Enjoy. Welcome to Vida Tennis, the podcast for those of us who eat, sleep, breathe tennis. I am your host, Jennifer Gelhaus, and today we welcome Mariaan de Swardt. Marianne is the director of Racquets at the Westwood Country Club in Austin, Texas. She's a former professional tennis player, and she got a career high ranking of 28 in singles and 11 in doubles. She is our first Grand Slam winner on the podcast, having won the 1999 Australian Open and 2000 French Open mixed doubles. She also got to represent her native South Africa in the Olympics and Fed Cup several times. She was a commentator for Eurosport and South African television, and she has coached at the professional, collegiate, and recreational level. Marianne is getting ready to host world-class tennis at her facility in Austin with the ATX Open, which is a WTA 250 event. Welcome to Vida Tennis. How are you today?
Hi, Jennifer, and thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on your podcast.
Me too. I'm so looking forward to talking with you, learning your story, how you got into coaching from the professional world, and obviously we'll get into the tournament that you're about to host, which I'm excited to go check out myself. But let's start at the beginning. How did you get started in coaching tennis?
I'm going to give you guys the short version. I think my life, basically, I was going to be a teacher of some sort. My dad was a school teacher for the first 10 years after school. My mom was a teacher. So I kind of always had them around as teachers. And then I started my first tennis coach. I was probably about 7 years old, and I was very, very lucky. He's an amazing man, and he really helped me discover how passionate I was about sports and tennis. And he was an amazing coach. So when I played on the tour, as I was getting close to the end, when you're kind of thinking, what is it you want to do for the rest of your life? More than half your life still ahead of you. And probably the last thing in my head, I was like, there's no ways I'm ever going to be a coach. I actually tried to get out of tennis for a little bit because I just wanted to experience something different other than tennis. But very quickly, whatever I wanted to do, it kind of brought me back to tennis. And I started my first real job after I was retired from professional tennis. I was the assistant coach at Georgia Tech, the women's team, with Brian Shelton, whose son just lost in the semifinal probably about 18 hours ago. So that was kind of my first stint as like a coach. But during your career as a professional tennis player, you kind of do rookie hours, and you kind of do a lot of we give a lot. I mean, we did a lot of Special Olympics. We did a lot of sponsorship events. So that was kind of always around. So I was like naturally, when Brian offered me the position as the women's assistant coach at Georgia Tech, I was like, you know what, I got to start somewhere. I'm just going to start here. And I really was extremely passionate about it. I actually was very surprised, but it was amazing working with high level collegiate players. I kind of got to know how college tennis works. I didn't play college tennis when I was a teenager. I turned pro. And then just from there, I just kind of went from one thing to the other. But that was kind of my start. And I made Hilton Head, South Carolina, my home when I played on the tour. And that was also the home of the professional tennis registry with Dennis Vandermeer. So I was around teachers all the time, and Dennis always pulled me into conferences and on the court. And his best thing was always he loved to make fun of me and throw me out to the sharks. And it was just amazing to be around all these teachers. So that really spurred on that passion for me. I think I gave you the long answer, actually. So to be honest with you, I don't think anything was in the cards, but me being a coach and being a teacher and mentor. I think I've had the most amazing people around me. Billie Jean King was a great mentor of mine as well. So I've had these amazing people around me. So I think I had no chance but to end up being a coach and a teacher and mentor. So I wouldn't change it for anything. I absolutely love it, and making people happy and trying to change their lives, making them better. I think just any kind of teacher, it's more than just teaching, whether it's tennis or it's school or a subject or soccer. I think there's so much more than just teaching the sport or a subject. So I think some people just have that passion for it. And I think I had it, but I also had great people around me who kind of paved the way for me without even knowing that that was happening. So,
Yeah. It's very common for really like high level players to not even think of coaching, right? Because it's their life. It's like all they've been exposed to, kind of, right? And
yeah.
it's kind of like you said, you want to kind of see what's out there, what other experiences you can have outside of the sport.
Yes. Yes.
But obviously, you have the perfect background to help someone with their game, and you've had coaches, so you know what coaching looks like. So there's a lot of things in your favor to be a good coach already.
Yeah, absolutely.
How long were you coaching college?
I only did about 2.5 years. After 2.5 years, I was ready to either go into a head coaching position or try something different. And I really loved it. But soon after I stopped playing, and it's going to sound really silly, but even the traveling college tennis, I was like, I just don't want to travel anymore. I just want to be home. I do like traveling, but being from South Africa, I had to travel really far, and I was away from my family for very, very long periods of time. And I just didn't want to travel anymore. And I wanted to be home, and I wanted to be around my family. So even that little bit of traveling that you do with college, you travel over the weekends, or you go on recruiting trips, and in the summers you're recruiting. So I was just like, I don't really want to do that anymore. And I started dabbling in a couple of other things, but I also was just teaching at a little club close to me. It was just a little public park, and I got a little bit of clientele there. And I did, like I said, I did a couple of other things, and I had a couple of professional players who were like, "Hey, Marianne, can you come help me?" Just a couple months, and I started doing a little bit of that. But I would go like a couple of weeks here, and go a month to Europe or go to Wimbledon, or I started doing a little bit of that, but I didn't want to constantly. That was where I was, you know, earning my living, and I just didn't want to be at airports anymore.
Yeah.
So I really loved doing that, from the start. My mom reminded me actually not too long ago when I was a kid. I mean, I was little. I mean, I was 10 years old, and I would get all the kids in the neighborhood. I would get them all to come and play with me because I've always have somebody to play with me. My brothers, they were a lot older than me. So I would gather up all the kids in the neighborhood and I'll teach them how to play tennis. So I was like 10 and 11 and 12, and their payment was like a bag of chips, or they had to bring me some sweets or something. But that's how I got them to come play with me. So I would teach them tennis. And my mom said it was pretty funny. She never really took video or anything of that, but she said it was pretty hysterical for me lining up these kids and trying to teach them tennis.
Oh,
Uh,
that's fantastic because
yeah.
I think that's a true test for a high level player or a young coach. I think that's the hardest thing is to have a beginner that doesn't know anything about tennis and teach them how to swing, how to hit the ball and like make it fun, positive and keep encouraging them. Like I think that that's kind of an art. Obviously you develop that at a really young age. But did you find it difficult at all when you switched from going from highly competitive players to maybe more recreational players?
In the beginning, it was a little bit difficult for me because I've been around high level, world class players all the time. And even though I did all sorts of clinics, kids clinics, Special Olympics, sponsorship, and it was all recreational players, I never did enough of it to, where I saw how fortunate you are really if something like tennis is not an easy sport, but I think if you're athletic, it comes a little bit easier. But tennis is an extremely difficult sport. There's so many things that you need to be good at. Hand-eye coordination. I mean, you've got to be fit. You've got to be strong. You've got to be smart. There's so many different things. And I think when I really transitioned into starting to teach more recreational players, I think the thing that was difficult for me in the beginning was when I was teaching people and I wanted them to be better than what they really wanted to be. I'm like, man, this person can be really great, but they just didn't have the passion that I had. And I'm like, man, if they just practiced a little bit harder, they can be amazing. Whether it was a young kid or whether it was an adult who was very athletic, I had to kind of like, okay, these people actually, they have lives, they have jobs. This kid wants to be a doctor. They don't necessarily want to be a tennis player, but this is just the sport for a lifetime. So I think once I kind of understood that, then it became easier for me. But that was really hard for me to understand, like, how can they not want to be better? Like, why don't they just work a little bit harder? I mean, why don't they play a little bit more? And I think in the beginning as well, beginners, that was hard because I kind of know, like, especially if you're a little bit older and you learn, like, it takes a long time to become a decent tennis player, and
Yeah.
that beginner stage was a little bit more intimidating for me. And now it's honestly beginners and beginner intermediate is my favorite people to teach, because if you teach them the right things, and it's my job to try and get them to be passionate about it and get them to like it and try and help them not be frustrated. And the same with kids too. I think adults probably is a little bit more challenging because adults overthink everything, and a kid will just laugh and they learn in a different way. So I think honestly kids sometimes are a little bit easier to teach than adults just because of that, because adults also are self-conscious, oh man, I don't want anybody to see like how bad I am. Put me on the back court. So no, I don't want to play with people. I'm terrible. You know what I mean? So adults are very self-conscious. So I really love getting them out of that, getting them out of their own heads. And like, listen, nobody's looking at you. Everybody's worried about themselves. So
Yeah.
I love the challenge that beginners bring to me. And I love seeing them improve. I absolutely love it. I've taken people from probably my favorite lesson in my life was, I mean, literally somebody that couldn't make contact with the ball when I bounced the ball. And after a year, we were actually rallying with green dot balls. It was an adult. I mean, it was probably one of my greatest success ever. I mean, she's a lady that never played tennis. She was in her 50s when she learned tennis and not very athletic, not because I just don't think she was exposed to anything. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges of my life, but she was extremely dedicated and I loved working with her and she's still playing tennis. I still keep in touch with her. We don't live in the same cities anymore, but I love that. And that's part of, for me, is just kind of giving back and hopefully help those around me fall in love with this lovely sport, this beautiful sport.
It's so funny because I think like for kids, they're used to trying new things, like everything's new to them, right?
Yeah.
And they don't come in like expecting to be good at anything. They're just willing to try. And so that I think that's why it's so much easier to teach kids because you tell them, here, hold the racket this way,
Yeah.
and they'll try it, right? Like with an
Exactly.
adult, what was really frustrating to me, and still sometimes even working with adults, is that they're gonna a lot of times they might continue to take lessons, but they still kind of stick with the things that they know,
Yeah.
uh, and they're still taking lessons,
Yeah.
but they're not improving as much as they could be because they're not really willing to change certain things, because they're afraid that they want like the instant fix instead of
No,
the.
absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. Whenever I start teaching an adult, so within the first 30 minutes, I teach them. At some point, I'm going to say to them, I'm going to say, listen, if you think the sport is easy and you're going to become a very good tennis player within the next year, it's probably not the sport for you because it is so challenging. But if you want to grow for the rest of your life and challenge yourself and learn a lot about yourself, if you want to play sport for a lifetime, this is it because you never quite get to the end of the journey. It's always just enjoying the journey every day and working to get better. I hit once a week with a friend of mine who was on the tour here in Austin, and I love that 45 minutes to an hour that we hit because I'm like, man, my backhand's actually getting better, or wow, I hit the volley's really good today, or man, it was challenging today. I didn't move well. So every day is a little bit of a challenge, and tennis is a great way to really learn how to problem solve and problem solve under pressure, and that's life. 101 is problem solving.
And when you put it like that, it's not a negative thing, right? When you put it
No,
that
not
way,
at all.
like it's a lifetime sport. It's not necessarily like I'm discouraging you from playing tennis, go play pickleball, which is easier, right? It's the
Uh-huh.
opposite. This is going to be something that you're going to be working on your whole life. But how exciting is it that you can be playing for 30 years and you can still be working on something, improving? I mean, that's why we have jobs, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have
Yes.
jobs if
Yeah.
people just got good.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I also like what you said about that's another lesson that I had to learn. And that one I'm kind of over at this point in my career, but caring more than your player. And I actually encountered that when I was coaching college. And it was really frustrating because it's so easy to see for us, right, from outside perspective, looking in, like all the things that this player could be doing to get better, to take it to the next level. But if they're not in it, if they don't have the interest, the self-discipline and motivation to do it, then it's really, really difficult. They have to want it more than you want it for them. And
Yeah,
that's a tough lesson.
that is, and I think with college, I try to. We actually, Brian and I, when we recruited, actually the team. I mean, I'm not going to say that I was part of that team that won the NCAA competition. I left before Georgia Tech. I think I left, and then a year or 2 years later, Georgia Tech won the NCAA women's title. But I feel very proud that I was part of a lot of those girls that won the title. I was part of that recruitment process, and we actually had, I think there was two of the women or two or three of the women in there that played a little bit of pros, but nobody was really at that level where they were going to make it. But
Mhm.
I mean, what was great was everybody kind of bought into the process. And if they didn't, it was hard. So, I mean, I feel like the kids that we got at the time, they bought into what we wanted to achieve, Brian and I. I mean, we wanted to make them the best they can be for 4 years. Let's see where you can go. We say you're going to get an amazing education at Georgia Tech. And in the process, let's see how far you can go, how good you can be. And I think we had everybody buy into that. And for some kids, it was hard because Georgia Tech is a very, very, it's like top 5 engineering school in the country. I mean, it's hard. It's a math and science school. And then not only do they demand hard work in the classroom, but also we demanded hard work on the tennis court. So for some
It's
kids, I
intense.
think it was hard, but I mean, everybody bought into it. And I think that is at the end how Brian Shelton won the women's NCAA title, and he did the same at the University of Florida. But Brian has an amazing knack to, I mean, he's extremely passionate. He's a great coach, but he finds a way to get these kids to buy in. Let's see how good you can be. Let's see if you can get your grades better. And I think that's ultimately, that's one of your jobs as a coach is to have people buy in to what you want them to be. And
Yeah.
then everybody's unique and everybody's a little bit different. I mean, just kind of thinking back to college, I think there was maybe 10 or 12 women there. I think eight of them had full scholarships, but we treated everybody the same. But I mean, everybody you worked with a little bit different, you know.
Yeah.
I remember one of the players. She was extremely smart, and now I think she's a surgeon, to be honest. But she was very smart. But I mean, she was a student, and she wasn't naturally as talented maybe as the other players. But man, that she worked, and I mean, we got everything out of her game, and she was there for 4 years, and she was amazing. So everybody was really unique. For some people, it came a little bit more natural, but other kids had to work a little bit harder, and personalities are different. I remember I made some mistakes because I just didn't know the people yet, going on court for the on-court coaching and maybe not saying the right thing because sometimes you gotta kind of know who you're talking to, who's your audience, and sometimes you gotta go in there with a lot of energy, and other times because they have so much energy, you gotta be the calm one a little bit, or
Yeah.
so it was a great learning experience, and I think that's what makes coaching so great. Is like everybody's a little different, so you got to find a way to bring out the best in people, and for everybody, it's a little different.
And I know that you are basically, I mean, a doubles specialist. And I can imagine that you teach a lot of doubles, I'm sure lots of women's doubles. Can you point us into any major difference in how you teach doubles or double strategy from like going from a professional level to more of a recreational, maybe 3-5, 4-0, maybe 4-5 level at your club?
Yeah, I think as far as the difference in teaching, I mean, to me, doubles is won and lost. Well, tennis is won and lost. Who makes less errors, and then doubles is really won and lost. I think you have a better chance of winning if you're aggressive, or at least one of you aggressive. But if I see somebody is really comfortable at the back, I try and make them a little bit better at the net. Or if somebody's really comfortable at the net and they don't like their ground stroke, then I try and make players more well-rounded players. So if they don't like to be defensive, we work a little bit more on defense. If they don't like offense, we work a little bit harder on offense. If they've never served and volleyed before, well, there's a first time for everything. So I
Yeah.
try and just kind of look at players and where are the holes. I always tell players, think about loading up your arsenal. If something misfires, then you want to be able to go and look at something full on something else. If your serve misfires, maybe you can be really consistent, and if you're not really consistent today, maybe you can get to the net a little bit. So you want to kind of, whatever you don't have, you want to add that. And I think a lot of recreational players, especially when they get to that point where they really got to start using the continental grip and learn about slices and about changing grips and hitting top spins and that kind of stuff. It's hard and it's not easy, but I just keep thinking that I'm adding some different things in my arsenal, and I'm going to, so I kind of look at just kind of adding different things in people's games. That's going to make them a little bit more well-rounded. And I like it. It's fun. And it's kind of the same. I mean, you kind of do the same thing with the pros, but I mean, as a pro, you gotta do everything good, and you gotta do some things you gotta do great. You gotta have something, otherwise you're not gonna make it anywhere. So it's kind of the same thing with the recreational players. Just try and keep developing them. If they don't have a one-handed slice, let's work on a one-handed slice. Let's add a topspin serve,
Right.
within reason. Obviously, it's a little bit more physical that you have to be, and you have to have a little bit of mobility with the topspin serve. So it's just fun working towards developing people's games and working with people that are passionate, even though it's recreational. It's still a little bit more fun winning a league match than losing.
Of course. No,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that approach. What about going from coaching to now being a director? First of all, is this your first director position? And second, how are you adjusting to that? Because obviously it's so much more than teaching. Now you have a lot of different responsibilities.
So my career kind of progressed over a long period of time. I would say in the last maybe 15, 20 years, I went from an adult coordinator to a head pro to assistant director of rackets. And then this is my second one. No, this is my third director of rackets position here at Westwood Country Club. So it's been a slow and steady progression. It's not something that I'm like, oh man, this is so much work and this is just, a lot more in, meetings and a lot more paperwork and all that stuff. Uh, I've I've been working towards this, so I kind of know what to expect. I enjoy this aspect of it, but luckily I can still teach because I love teaching. Like to teach a little bit more, but my duties is really to make sure that the membership are taken care of, that the pros are doing what they're supposed to be doing, keep encouraging the pros to continue working and getting better as coaches. I think, and I've gone through that a little bit, and I think everybody has sometimes. The worst thing that can happen is boredom. It's easy to get bored and get stagnant a little bit. So I think with continuing education and with continuously looking to get better, whether you are a tennis coach or whether some coaches are really into footwork, some coaches are a little bit more in techniques, the latest and greatest techniques. Some coaches are a little bit more in the mental side of tennis. So I think everybody has a little bit of a niche, and you want to be an all-rounded coach. So I continuously try and encourage everybody to work on getting better. So yeah, it's a different position, but at the end of the day, I love to keep it really simple. I love making people happy. I love solving problems because there's always little issues and little problems that you have to solve. And I think I've trained my whole life how to solve problems. I
Yeah,
think sports is solving problems. Tennis is hard because every single ball that you hit is you trying to solve the problem. It's not the
100.
point. If you look at the Australian Open, I mean, some of those points are 20, 25, 30 strokes. I mean,
Yeah.
they trying to solve a problem every single time, 15 times. So I really enjoy that aspect of it. I enjoy that every day is a little different. Some days I can teach a little bit more. Some days I have to do a little bit more meetings. Some days I have to have one-on-ones with the pros. I enjoy that aspect of it. I just love being around tennis people. The club that I'm at right now, it's a true rackets club, and I love being at a true rackets club. I mean, these people are so into tennis. They watch the Australian Open. They get up in the mornings. I mean, I feel like I'm around my family.
Yeah.
It's just and I always tell people you can go anywhere in the world, and if you are around tennis people, even if you can't speak the same language, I feel like we've got something in common. There's a respect, there's a camaraderie, there's an etiquette that tennis players have across the world, and I love being around that. So
Yeah, I love that too. I forget the saying. English is my second language too, but I forget the saying right now. But it's like you got your hand in different things, right? And
yeah,
like very different skill sets.
yeah,
So I love that. I love teaching, obviously, but I don't
yeah.
know that I could just 100% teach all the time. I think eventually I would get maybe a little bit bored. I like having the variety, and I find it exciting. So
Yeah, and now with the pickleball and padel, and you got platform tennis, there's all sorts of other things. I've kind of embraced all of those. Tennis is sport that I love and it's my number one sport. But I think you want to embrace the other things too, because, like, I mean, I was talking to somebody this morning, pickleball, you start on a Monday, you're a beginner on Monday, and on Friday you're intermediate, and like 3 weeks later you're an expert.
Yeah.
That's not like that. That's why it's so popular. Tennis, not so much. So I try and embrace all of the sports because one, it gets people off the couch, it gets people active, it gets people to form a little community. And same with padel. I love padel. I've never actually played platform tennis, but I've seen it. I played squash too when I was a kid, and I played racquetball, played table tennis. I do a little bit of everything. It's healthy for you. It's healthy for your brain. It's healthy for your body. Obviously, tennis, we get a really great workout. I like it so much more to get a great workout on a tennis court than sitting on a bike at a gym. It just kill me.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the directors out there that might be listening, what has been your number one goal for your first year as a director at Westwood?
To be honest with you, I have one goal. Let's make everything a little bit better. Our junior program's great. Okay, what can we do to make it better? Our pro shop is great. Okay, what can we do to make it better? We have great programming. Okay, what can we add? What can we do to make it a little better? What can we do to add? I've had great mentors around me my whole life. People who's been around me have been, just for instance, I've worked at the ATP 250 clay court US men's clay court tournament, with a tournament director and the tournament manager there, and I worked with them for 13 years, and I mean, they're amazing. Those two women are absolutely amazing, and every year, my favorite thing is to go to them and go, what are you going to do to make it better this year? And every year they do something. They do a couple things. I'm like, I can't believe it. They did it again. It's better. So I'm always kind of looking at what are we going to do? So is there one specific goal? No, and I ask the pros, I'm like, what are you going to do this year to make yourself better? Is this where you want to be? Is challenging people, challenging myself. It's just, what are we going to do to up everything? And it's across the board. It's what are we going to do with member services? I mean, we need to be a little better. We were great last year, but we can do better this year. So I think it's with everything, customer service, on court, let's look at having an exemplary service every day, every time a member steps out to the tennis facility is, you know, was I dressed appropriately? Was I on time? There's always something that you can do to make a place look better. I mean, is there balls lying around? Let's pick up the balls, push the chairs in on the patio. So there's always stuff to get better, and I think that's what makes me get up in the morning. And when I go back at night, even if it was not a good day, something is going to be better. Whether it's a coach, whether it's a person, whether it's making the facility look cleaner, whether it's my offer, something is going to be better. So I always want to kind of tick something off on my list. Even if my list was long, I'm going to tick something off.
Yeah, that's a championship mindset to think that way. My husband, he has a really good saying. He's always said, you're always either getting better or you're getting worse. There's no staying the same.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's the truth, that's what I tell sometimes with kids. They get on the court and my parents want me to play tennis. I hate tennis. I don't want to play tennis. And I always try and find something, and I always give the kids a choice. I said, you know what? That's no problem. If you don't want to play tennis, we're going to get fit today, but we're going to get better at something. So
Right.
it's either tennis or we're going to get fit. And I always choose tennis. So then
Of course.
yeah. So I try and make it fun, So you want to try and make it fun, but we're going to get better somehow, anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us about the ATX Open. What are you most excited about? Just tell us all about the event.
So I worked at Westwood Country Club, and I was involved with a US men's clay court, the 250 at River Oaks, and it's kind of weird how it worked out that now I'm at the Westwood Country Club, home of the ATX Women's Open, and it's getting exciting. We're a little bit less than 4 weeks away. It's two very different operations. So it's very interesting kind of learning how the operations and how everything works here at Westwood Country Club and how it worked at River Oaks, So this is going to be my first year that I'm going to be involved with a tournament, and it's exciting. It's exciting. I love this part of the business as well. I love being in the background. I love being in the trenches and working as a team. And this is something that we're getting ready now. We're busy working on our schedules, and there's sponsor clinics and Special Olympic clinics and all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of fun to be involved with that again. And just looking at it, how they do it a little bit different over here. I think every tournament has challenges. One of the challenges here at Westwood Country Club is, we have a challenge with space. We're right here on Lake Austin. This club is absolutely beautiful, but with that is we have challenges. So just kind of looking at how Dropshot, who runs the tournament, how they start overcoming these challenges. We basically lose 2 tennis courts here. We've got 18 tennis courts here and 5 pickleball courts. We lose 2 tennis courts during the tournament. We've got 27 tennis teams here that plays league out of the club. So, this club is extremely active. Yeah. So when the tournament is on, we still try and keep our members active. And I think we have 3 or 4 courts that we do limited. Members can come out and play. It's still a private club. And we do lessons and group lessons during that time. Luckily, I have Frank Kelly, who's been working here for 42 years, and he's been doing, this will be his 3rd tournament. This is my 1st. So I'll be working with him to kind of see how we facilitate it and how we navigate the courts. Because, we go from having 18 courts available now to only 4. And all these people are crazy for tennis. They love tennis. So it's going to be interesting for me to work with everybody here and the team and see how we're going to keep our members happy. They want to watch tennis. They love tennis, but they also want to keep playing. So it's very different. We've got Madison Keys coming, Jessica Pagula. We've got some heavy hitters coming. So when there's rumors of a couple other players, I can't say, I guess, yet. So, we've got a great lineup. Super excited to be part of this club and then also the tournament, and super proud to be here. Yeah.
That's so exciting. And I find that really interesting because these big events are not usually at country clubs because of exactly what you were saying. The priority is more on the members, keeping the members happy, making sure that the facility is available to the members because they're the ones that own the club, right? What makes Westwood different in that sense that they're willing to host such a big event?
Well, I think one, it's people really join. People join, there's 2 sides of the club. People join. We actually have a wait list now. The wait list is pretty long. I think it's a 3 or 4 year wait list, but people join to play tennis. We've got tennis, we've got pickleball, aquatics, gym, a great fitness facility, food and beverage is amazing. But then we also have a marina. We have 40 spots, I think, 40 boat spots. I think it's a 10-year wait list to get a, spot. It's very, very difficult to have a boat slip on Lake Austin. So anyway, I think that what makes it unique here is, there's so many tennis crazy people here. And that's why I think I love it here because they're not only tennis players, but they're also tennis fans. They love watching tennis. I've talked to members here that they maybe don't play as much tennis anymore, but they love watching. Or maybe they're playing pickleball because they can't play too much tennis anymore. Maybe tennis is a little bit too physical, but they still love watching tennis. And that's why they did everything they can to have the tournament here. We signed an extension, so I think we're going to have it here again next year. And I think that's the one thing that I loved about River Oaks Country Club as well is so you join, it's golf, tennis, aquatics, there's a lot of different aspects, but over there, kind of the same thing. Even the golfers buy in on the tennis side because you can appreciate as a sports person, you can appreciate high-level sports. I appreciate ice hockey and the level of athleticism. I appreciate basketball. I appreciate other sports at a high level. So I think to host a professional event at your club, if you have that opportunity, I think it's a great enhancement for members to actually, they don't have to fly somewhere. They don't have to fly to New York or somewhere else. They can see Jessica Pagula here. They can see Madison Keys or Ben Shelton last year, or they can see it in their own backyard. I think it's a great opportunity for both these clubs, and I'm super privileged to be part to have been part of both clubs now,
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I wish more clubs did that because at the end of the day, it's 1, maybe 2 weeks of the year, right? Where
Yeah,
you're sharing your facility. But like to me, that's such a special thing to offer to
yeah,
even to your viewers, right? Because now,
yeah,
like you said, they're getting to experience world-class tennis right
yeah.
at their club. I mean, to me, it doesn't get
Yeah,
any
and I
better.
mean it is a little bit disruptive, but like you say, it's disruptive for a couple of weeks of the year where you may be preparing the
Right.
facility and then breaking it down. But I think overall members appreciate it. I love it. I think for players, my perspective when I was a player, it's almost like it's a little bit more homey when it's at a country club than when it's at a huge facility. It's a little bit more family orientated. Like when you played at country clubs, most of the time when I played, you could get housing. So you stayed with families. And so you get that little bit of 1 week or 2 weeks, 1 week here and there, you get that, where you around a family again and you're not staying in a hotel or have that warm feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, but to be honest, I don't know if they have housing, if they offer housing here, but I know at River Oaks, I mean, all the players stays at housing. I mean, Johnny Isner stayed with housing, Jack Salt, Ben Schott, like all these guys stay at housing because the members, one, they live close by, and then two, I think it's an opportunity for the players to just have a home cooked meal and be
Yeah.
around family and not be around a heartless hotel. Hotels are nice, but when you do it day in and day out, it becomes kind of heartless, if I can say it like that.
That's so fun. So tell us about the Game Changers event that's on Wednesday. Why is this event important to you and how did that whole thing come about?
It's kind of funny how it came about. I happened to walk into Van Barry, who's the general manager here, and he was like, "Hey, Marianne, I want you to meet Jessica." And then I was like, "Oh, I kind of knew Jessica McMillan. I kind of knew her from before." And they were like, "Hey, we want to do this breakfast. I think it's on a Wednesday. Is it a Wednesday or Tuesday now? Now I can't remember. I think it's a Wednesday. No, it's a Tuesday morning. And we're going to bring in Trina Adams, and we want you to be part of it." And I was like, yeah, I'm in. What do I need to do? So I think it's great that they do this to the USDA and bringing in different women who's been game changers. And I think I'm working with a WTA alumni. So we're going to bring in a bunch of WTA alumni in the Texas area. I've invited quite a few people that are my peers and people that I know that live in the area or in the Dallas area, Houston area. I mean, there's a huge amount of former WTA players that live in Texas. So I kind of reached out to all of them, and I think it'll be a great, all of them, we paved the way for the generation now, but it's great that they, recognize, the game changers and everybody that did it before. And those before me did that for me. Martina Navratilova and Chris Everett. I mean, they paved the way. And before that was the Billie Jean Kings and the Rosie Casals. I mean, every generation kind of paves the way for the next one. So I think it's a great way to recognize and honor these women and bring the local community in. So I'm super excited about it. And I think Jessica Bagula and Madison Keys is going to be there as well. I mean, they are paving it for the next generation, so each generation helps the other one and we try and make each other better. And I think it's great. That's the way it should be.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I have just 3 more questions for you. We'll take it one at a time. One is, are there any changes that you want to see in the tennis coaching industry or even in maybe professional women's tennis? Anything that comes to mind?
I kind of like how all the changes have evolved in men's and women's tennis. One of the things that I like that they're doing now, and I wish they did it a long time ago, is the point system. It was always different. The men's point system was different than the women's, and I think they're kind of the same now. It's if you win a grand, I don't know what the point. I think if you win a grand slam, it's 2,000 points or whatever that is. It's double points. But I think kind of the men and women kind of coming together because I think they each bring something unique to tennis. There's things that I like about men's tennis And there's things I don't like about men's tennis. There's things I like about women's tennis and I don't like about women's tennis. But together, I think it's amazing. So I like that there's more events that the men and women are doing together because I think there's room for both. I think the women are amazing athletes. The men are amazing athletes. So I like that part. I don't necessarily want to see anything change. I know there's this whole controversy about we got to keep the men's matches at 5 sets, but I tell you what, unless it gets to set number 4, I mean, sometimes it's just watching, 5 sets. I mean, sitting there and watching. I mean, what kid is going to watch 3 and 4 hours in a row? I mean, those are junkies like me that will watch it, maybe me and you.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of indifferent. I think the men and women should play best of 5, maybe from the quarterfinal on, but everything before that is best of 3. I don't know. Maybe they want to just keep it traditional like it is. You can't make the men and women best of 5 sets. I mean, the Grand Slam's going to be 4 weeks long, too long.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
so, but I mean, maybe from the quarterfinal on, it's 5 sets for everybody. I don't know.
We had 3 out of 5 sets in women. I think like 99% of those matches would be 5-setters.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure.
For
Unless you're
sure.
long.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
like the fact that with the men, they do the 10-point tiebreaker now. I like with doubles, they do the tiebreaker. I'd like to actually see, I mean, they play no ad, right? Do they play no ad now?
No.
In
Oh,
some
in double?
tournaments, they started experimenting playing no ad in some tournaments just with the doubles and mixed doubles. I kind of like that. I think it makes it exciting. In mixed doubles, you serve gender to gender, and then in men's doubles, women's doubles, you can receive as choice. I kind of like that little bit of changes. I am a
Yeah.
traditionalist, but I think we gotta be open minded and we gotta keep working and we gotta keep thinking what is the best way to evolve. We played with wooden rackets when I started in the 80s. We don't have to play with wooden rackets anymore. The rackets are great.
Right.
So let's have an open mind and let's keep evolving. If I can name something, I kind of like with a golf, if you're number one, you've won the most money. And I think it's kind of the same with tennis. Whoever has the most money, like singles, whoever's going to be number one is going to have the most money. And then second most is going to be ranked number 2. I think I've looked at that before, and there's very few changes that goes in there. So I kind of like the golf that it's really simple. The person that has the most money is the person that's number one. Other than that, I mean, I kind of like that we go through a little bit of changes here and there every now and again, but there's not something specific that I would say, hey, yeah, this needs to be done or that needs to be done. So
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And then what has been the Grand Slam moment of your career and the double bagel moment of your career? It doesn't have to be so literal. I know you've won a Grand Slam, a couple of Grand Slams, and at some point in your life, you probably got double bagel, but it doesn't have to be literal. It can
oh my
be.
God, I can remember both. Don't you worry. So, so, I think the first Grand Slam I won at the Australian Open was amazing. It happened a little bit later in my career, and whether it's mixed, I mean, obviously singles is the ultimate Grand Slam that you can win, but I think doubles and mixed doubles is right up there. It's a very, very close second. A Grand Slam is a Grand Slam.
Of
So
course.
that was really, it was surreal, and I remember we beat Serena Williams and Max Murray in the final, and it was just before the men's final started, so the stadium was absolutely packed. So
Oh,
it was amazing. Um, and then my first 2 bagels, I was 12 years old, and I played against a 16-year-old, and it was the longest match ever. But she bageled me. I'll never forget her name. Her name was Gail Boone, and she was just bigger. She was just bigger and stronger than me. And man, I think I cried for a whole week. I was devastated. I've never had such a bad defeat in my life. But anyway, I got over that. And then I have to remember one more. The first time I played a Grand Slam as a junior, I only played one Grand Slam as a junior, and that was the U.S. Open. And I've never been to the U.S. Open. I think I was 15. I think I was 15 actually. Yeah, I was 15 years old. So I had direct acceptance, and I played against Nicole Arendt, who's a really good friend of mine. She was a really, really good tennis player. So I drew her in the first round, but I mean, I was so overwhelmed by the size of the US Open and just being at a Grand Slam. I think it was 6-love, 5-love before I got a game. And then, I mean, I was absolutely devastated. Luckily, I got one game. So, but I'll never forget that match. I mean, I just like, it was like I was on another planet. I mean, I couldn't believe the enormity of that tournament. And before I knew it, I mean, I barely warmed up and I was shaking hands. I was just completely overwhelmed. So, yeah, so those, those are the bagels I remember.
Quite literal double bagel.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today, being part of Vida Tennis. And I really look forward to going to the tournament and visiting your club.
Absolutely. I look forward. Thank you so much for having me. And I look forward meeting you in person, and a great podcast. And I'll be listening.
Thank you all for listening to Vida Tennis, and thank you, Marianne. And also, gosh, I am so sorry. I can't seem to pronounce your name right. I think I say it differently every single time. It makes me think of like how Johnny Mac doesn't seem to be able to say Zverev. Have you noticed that he always says Severev? As always, please visit vidatennispodcast.com. If you would like to learn more about the pod, contact me or find any of our links to social media, past episodes, etc., etc. See you next week.